All right, good morning, everybody. We're at about 20, so I'm assuming we'll have a few more here. Um, Yesterday I was busy setting up, figuring out if you look on here who's going to be on black days, who's going to be on red days, and who's going to be all virtual. But majority of this class is actually virtual, which is by far the most of any of my classes. Um, Going to try something a little bit different today that we're going to use starting next week. So I'm going to see how it works right away. So what I'm going to do here is share my screen and see if I can pull it over. Um, all right, we're still going to wait a second here for people to get in. Um, all right, we're about 20. So I'm going to put a question here on the warm up. I want you guys to individually respond to me. I'll copy the responses. And if you, like I said, if you just go back and respond with something, you'll get 5 points easy credit today to start off class. Now, I'm going to try this again and see if I can get this correct this time. Did it again. All right, can you guys see the question on here? Francesca, I can see you. Can you see it? All right, so what were some major steps to the creation of the religion of Islam? So go back through your notes from Tuesday. Take a look at that, please, and tell me what you think. Okay. Even if you can name one or two things, like major things that one or two things that Muhammad did to create the religion of Islam. I know we didn't quite get as far as I wanted, but you should be able to answer this. Again, send me your response in the chat function, please. All right, so I've got 9 responses, and I've got 23 people in here. So 9 people will get a grade, and the other ones will get a 0. Looking at the answers, Muhammad fleeing to Medina, the Hijra. Muhammad married into money, angels, unification of the nomadic tribes the first time. Expansion of the Islamic Empire. Yeah. All right. So everybody who responded all mentioned pretty accurate details. Good job. Okay. If you didn't get a chance to do that, please do that. We're gonna go ahead and continue. And so, as I guess just a reminder, let's see. There we go. As a reminder, yesterday we talked about how Muhammad had this vision and dedicated himself to one God, and that this one God is similar to the Jewish and Christian God, except for the fact that this God now, the final revelation, according to Muslims, came down to Muhammad. And so Muhammad was the final prophet and one that would be worshipped. All right. So I think we then talked about how after he died, his writings were compiled in this book called the Quran. All right. So moving forward here, I'm going to try to cut this to about 15 minutes. It's going to be difficult because it's a lot of information. I'm going to do the best I can. So I need you guys to follow along. Some of you I can already tell are doing work in other classes. I don't know why my phone wanted to tell me that. Yeah, so let's see if we can't pay attention here and crank this out. So if you're a follower of Islam or you are a Muslim, you're called to follow the 5 pillars, all right? And I'm assuming you probably went over this in middle school, but just as a reminder, and I know it was on your warm-up or your intro, but the declaration of faith, there is no other God worthy to worship except God, and Muhammad is his prophet or messenger. You repeat this before you pray every day, okay, called the declaration of faith. The salat, which is mandatory prayer 5 times a day. And you wash yourself before you do this, and you get a prayer rug out and you face in the direction of Mecca. And so if you were in class, we would identify which direction that is, but we're not in class. It's right behind me, but it makes no sense on the computer. So if you have ever been to an Islamic country before, you'll know that there are prayer towers, and there's actually an announcement when you're supposed to do this each day. The third then is known as the zakat, and this is kind of like what Christians do when they call tithing, when they give 10% of their income. But for Muslims, it's the idea that everything comes from God, and so you give back 2.5% of your income to the mosque so that they can help people who need it. Okay, now 2.5% is a lot less than 10. It's 1/4 if your brain's turned on. Okay, fourth then is fasting during the month of Ramadan. This is considered, Ramadan changes based off the lunar calendar. But typically the last, I don't know, since I've known a good Muslim that I've been friends with, last 4 or 5 years, it's been in around the month of May and June. But for a whole month, you don't eat or drink from sunrise to sunset. And some of you guys can put this together that, June are some of the longest days of the year. So from essentially about 6 a.m. until 9:30, you don't eat or drink anything. And you are purifying yourself So for 1 whole month, and you do this with your family, and you kind of have a celebration at the beginning and you have a celebration at the end. And that's to show your devotion to Allah. Last then is a pilgrimage, which is the fancy word for a trip. Okay. You do this once in your lifetime if you can afford it. Okay. And that trip is to Mecca, the original place where Muhammad dedicated the Kaaba, the famous altar. And so 2 to 3 million Muslims make this trip every year. 2020 was a very difficult year for followers, basically for Saudi Arabia, which is where Mecca is today, because not to sound like an American capitalist here, but that's a lot of money to be made off 2 to 3 million visitors that are not allowed to come from all over the world because of COVID-19 to participate in this pilgrimage. If you do this, you get to add kind of a name, like a Haji, or I forgot, there's another different name for women, to your name. So you actually add that as like you add that before you say your name. So it'd be like Haji Francesca, and that would mean like, it's kind of like a fancy, you would put in like on an envelope or something if you were sending it, but it means that you had completed this trip. All right, here's another good picture for you. Here's the main mosque in Mecca. You can see this. It's unbelievable. You can see the hills if you look out where Muhammad had his revelations. And I think the architecture is just awesome. You can tell that it's a combination of like Greek and Roman architecture with this arabesque, like geometric figure as well. I'm not going to go there because I'm a Christian. Not that I can't, but it's pretty cool. It's dangerous though, also because of the amount of people in one space, as you can imagine. Okay, we'll watch a little video on that in a second here. So the mosque then, if you guys look at here, this is kind of an example of a mosque. That's where Muslims worship. There are a couple mosques pretty close to North Central. There's a huge mosque in Carmel. There's a big mosque on the east side, just south of Washington Township. And the original mosque was made in the shape and the exact replication of Muhammad's house. So that is that's kind of how they copied it. And every mosque has some similar characteristics, like a wall that people face, called the Qibla, where it's in the direction that Mecca is. So that's the way they face when they pray at the mosque. And you go to the mosque on, I believe, I want to say Saturday nights, but I'm not total. Some reason I'm blanking on that. Anyways, all right, we've got about a 3.5 minute video here. This is pretty cool. It's old school a little bit, don't get me wrong, but I, as a world history teacher, I'm always fascinated by this. I always get kids asking me like 4,000 questions. So if you were to make the Hajj, whether you were from the United States or Mexico or Brazil or China or Kenya, it doesn't matter where you're from, like this is the experience you would have. And so this is about a 3-minute, 45-second clip we're going to take a look at here. Here's my question for you. Is the YouTube on your screen or not? Is it just on my screen?
Your screen.
Okay, I'm going to have to drag this over, I believe. Now, can you guys see it?
No.
Yeah?
No. No.
No?
We can only see the YouTube link.
All right, can you guys see it now? Yes?
No, we don't.
No.
What are you guys seeing on your screen right now?
We see the URL.
Yeah, it just says click to add title. You're still on the what is that? Like
Google Slide.
Oh, that's super weird because of the fact that I'm not on that screen on my computer. All right, 1 second. Let me see if we can change this. Share screen, desktop 2. See, this is all the fancy technology we're working on. It's so cool, right? Now can you guys see it? Yay, nay? You guys got the YouTube video now?
Yeah.
Yes.
There we go. Big time. See, Mr. Brunette entering the 21st century 20 years later. All right. Guys, like I said, Sid, just watch. It's 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Like I said, a little old school, but it's pretty cool.
The Western Mountains of Saudi Arabia, in a sanctuary roughly 100 miles away. Since long before Islam, it has been considered sacred territory, where no one could hunt, cut trees, or fight. At the heart of it, the great mosque called Al-Masjid Al-Haram, and at its center is the Kaaba. Muslims don't worship the Kaaba. They worship what it represents, the one God. Hajj takes place in and around Mecca. It is a series of rituals performed between the 8th and 13th days of the last month of the Islamic calendar. While circling the Kaaba is the final act of the pilgrimage, it is also the top priority of pilgrims when they first get to Mecca. For Muslims who have prayed in this direction every day for years, seeing the Kaaba for the first time is almost overwhelming. Now to the Valley of Mina, where the Prophet Muhammad stopped and rested on his Hajj nearly 14 centuries ago. This is a town that grows from virtually 0 to 2 million people overnight. At dawn of the next day, the camps stir with anticipation for the greatest day of the Hajj. 2 million people are off to the plain of Arafat. Some 50,000 vehicles clog the roads. Arafat is 8 miles east of Mina. It's the place, Muslims believe, Adam and Eve found each other after exile from Eden, and it's seen by many as a rehearsal for the day of judgment.
It's Judgment Day. All the trappings of life sort of fall away, and you see these people in front of God Almighty, and that's all there is.
A strange quiet descends in the afternoon as people turn inward. It's called the Standing at Arafat. Oh, when the sun has set and pilgrims leave Arafat. Nearly 2 million people stand poised to move as soon as the sun dips below the horizon. The pilgrims move back toward the white tents of Mina, where tomorrow they will engage in a symbolic battle with the devil. Here, Muslims believe, God asked Abraham to sacrifice his son, but the devil challenged him not to. One story says, Abraham pelted the devil with stones 3 separate times, chasing him away. 3 stone pillars mark the spots where Abraham stood his ground. At a place called Muzdalifah, on the way to the pillars, pilgrims pick up pebbles to stone Satan themselves. The ritual is called the Jumu'at. With all other rites complete, pilgrims return to Mecca for a grand party. They have all earned an honorific title, Haji for the men, Hajjah for the women. Pilgrims arrive along in a current of a million strangers and go home riding a spiritual wave of rebirth.
Yemen. I used to have a home.
All right. So, curious, what do you guys think? Ian, you got your hand up. What do you think?
I actually just have a question. Why
Yep.
is such a bad stigma with Islam and terrorism when it's such a peaceful religion?
It's because in the United States, we are predominantly a Christian country, and our founding fathers were, well, they were Christians, but actually deists, so they weren't really Christians, but as time went on, the United States became more Christianized, and then there were the attacks of 9/11, 2001, and then before that, so before you were born, well before you were born, in the 1990s, basically there was a guy by the name of Saddam Hussein. He was the dictator of Iraq. 2 times the United States had to go to war against him in the 90s. And he was a tyrannical Islamic leader. And then this goes all the way back to 1978, way before you were born, before I was born. But the country of Iran, which is they're Shia Muslims, they overthrew the United States embassy, and they took hostage a bunch of American college kids and diplomats. And I don't know if you know this, but an embassy is considered that soil and that ground is considered that part of that country. And so the United States looked at it as an invasion of our country, actually. And so a lot of people, 95% of people in Iran are Muslim. And so it was the Ayatollah Khomeini, who was like a Muslim prayer leader, who led this revolution and overthrew the government and then overthrew the United States embassy. And so there's been a lot of kind of pent up hatred. So the United States went to war against Iran, but because we couldn't actually go to war during the Cold War, we financed Iraq. We actually gave weapons to Saddam Hussein to fight against Iran. So Iraq fought against Iran. We gave Saddam Hussein weapons. Russians gave Iran weapons. They fought. And then the weapons that we gave Saddam Hussein, he used against us in the 90s twice. It's really kind of complicated. And then after that, you had the rise of Al Qaeda and the Taliban in Afghanistan. The Taliban are mostly Muslim as well. And so and then there are a couple other, obviously Muslim terrorist sects that get a lot of attention because their goal is to basically eradicate capitalism and money grubbers and people who are into technology, and they want to go back to old conservative ways. Now, they get a lot of attention because they aim at the United States, because we're kind of like the cultural patrons and leaders of the world. And it's like the iPhone crud from here, technology from the United States goes out to the rest of the world. So that's why they kind of aim to attack the U.S. in different ways. Well, if you think about that, there are Christian terrorists all over the place as well, right? And if you were a Muslim and you were in another country, let's say Iran, you would say, well, they're Christian terrorists trying to do this, 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 and this. So it's kind of like, again, a rivalry. And it also dates back to things we're going to talk about in class in the next couple of weeks, like the Crusades, where Christians went and just murdered a bunch of Muslims, and the Muslims did the same thing back to the Christians, just because. What I'm going to talk about here in the next 15 minutes too, all kind of ties into it. Does that help at all? No, it's a really complicated answer to a very easy question, but not easy to explain. We have someone in the chat function. I don't even know where my mouse is. There it is. Let's see. Yeah, it is sad. It's sad that these two religions, Francesca said that these two peaceful religions can't coexist, really is, I don't know. Okay, so we'll see what happens in the next 100 years here, because the global economy is becoming so much more connected, and it doesn't matter whether you're Chinese or American or, Nigerian. If you have something that is of value and someone wants it, you're going to buy it. Religion is becoming less and less of a thing, and it's becoming more based on, again, who's got something that's of profit they can sell. All right, if you guys look at this real quick, I'm gonna get off the path that I was just on for 5 minutes. Thank you, Ian. And going to take a look at the gray here. In the 10 years that Muhammad was the leader of Islam, it spread over all of Arabia. But then look at the next 30 years under what are called the first four rightfully guided caliphs. These are the leaders after Muhammad. It spread over almost all of Persia into Egypt, and it started taking over a lot of what was the old Roman Empire. And then if you look within 100 years of Muhammad's death, they're already invading Western Europe. They're already going into India. They're already starting to move across North Africa and then down into the Sahara Desert. So the expansion was unbelievably fast. You could say it's because there were no other major strong empires around, but you also could just say that Muslim warriors were very tough. They got paid just like Roman soldiers. Whatever they conquered, they got to keep. And it was more about conquering at this point in the first 100 years than it was about converting. So the actual religion of Islam had a major problem. When Muhammad died, he had gathered up most of the Arabian world, and someone said that in the chat at the beginning of class. But he didn't name anybody as a successor. And he was the prophet and like basically the leader of the religion and the government, okay? So him being the main person, when he died, some people thought that he selected his 7-year-old cousin, Ali, to be the leader. And then some people said, no, that makes no sense. Pick someone who's of age and like can actually rule. And so what happens is Abu Bakr becomes the first what's called caliph. Caliph. You're going to know that word, caliph. And so instead of this little 7-year-old becoming the leader, they choose basically Muhammad's right-hand man who had actually married one of Muhammad's daughters and was his top general. And so from there, this became kind of the tradition of whoever's most qualified became the next caliph and not whoever was related to Muhammad. This would cause some major problems down the road, which I just alluded to a little bit earlier, and I'll talk about again. Okay, so I'm not going to read this whole thing. It's kind of boring. But the first 130 years, 20 years after the death of Muhammad were led by ironically, the tribe that hated him the most and tried to kill him 3 times. They took over power. They were known as the Umayyad. All right. And so because they started becoming more of a worldly religion and not so much an Arab religion then, they moved the capital from Mecca to Damascus. And so Mecca was the religious capital, but Damascus was the political and economic capital. Damascus is in Syria today. If you've never heard of it, Syria is in a civil war for the last 7 years. But gold and silver became the currency. They started again. They started trading with people all over the world or the Eastern Hemisphere. And you could convert, but they didn't want people to convert because they wanted people to pay what's known as the jizya. This is the head tax. And so if you didn't convert, they collected extra taxes on you. And so they didn't really want a bunch of converts because they wanted to make money. Does that make sense? So they took over a lot of land, didn't necessarily do much conversion. Okay. Now, the Umayyad family is in 750. They're rounded up at what's known as the Reconciliation Banquet because this family, the Abbasid family, said, all right, all the Umayyads come together. We're going to make peace with you because these were it was a Persian family that had a lot of power, and they come together at this banquet and they put carpets and rugs over their heads and they chop their heads off at the banquet, literally. And so that's the end of the Umayyads. Only one family member escaped into Spain, and that's why there would be Islam in Spain all the way until 1492 in the union of the union of Ferdinand and Isabella. Yeah. Yeah, and then they sponsored Christopher Columbus. You guys know that story. All right, so that would bring in the Abbasid dynasty, which was a little more like Persian oriented, not so much Arabic, and they moved the capital to Baghdad. You've heard of Baghdad before because the United States still, if you were paying attention during COVID, like right when it hit 7 months ago, maybe you heard the like in the news how our embassy was getting attacked there in Baghdad. So the U.S. still has a big presence there, but it used to be one of the most magnificent cities in the world from 750 until 1258 when the Mongols absolutely destroyed it and burned the entire thing to the ground and killed 1 million people that were there. So that's why it's not so pretty today, but it used to be really, really, really pretty. And it was arguably at that time much prettier, much more sophisticated than any European or American city or African city. And the only city that might have rivaled it would have been the two Chinese cities of Hangzhou and Guangzhou. Yeah, and if you guys have ever heard of the story Arabian Nights or 1001 Nights, or if you've ever watched the movie Aladdin before, that's actually about the city of Baghdad, okay, during the reign of the Abbasid Caliphate. And so huge like this is what we call the golden age of Islam, achievements in science. This is when they bring Indian numerals over and they start making all these advancements in algebra. Most of what you guys learn in geometry and algebra was developed during the Abbasid dynasty, and their house of wisdom was called the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. Also, though, if you were a woman, this was bad. A lot of conversion during this time, and women started to really lose their rights. So women couldn't go out in public without being covered. Women could only go to certain portions of the house. Rich men started to have concubines and what's called harems, which are places where you could keep women and you could use them for sexual pleasure, and then you didn't have to see them at all after. Just they kept a separate spot of the house, and they were protected by what's known as a eunuch. It was a male who had his male parts removed so that he couldn't impregnate the women. And then they actually would actually remove all his entire male member to protect the harem. That's pretty gross to think about. All right. So I'm gonna leave us with these last two slides here. The Sunni, there are two types of Muslims today, two major types. Okay. Again, it's very difficult to say like there's only two types. There's a lot of different types within this, but two major types, and the majority, so over 85% of Muslims today are called Sunni Muslims. These are the people that remain loyal to the Umayyad, Abu Bakr, and that they didn't care that Muhammad's family line wasn't the next caliph. If you look on the map that I have on your screen, all of the light green is where is majority Muslim today, or a lot of Muslims, and the light green is they're Sunni Muslims. And then in the dark green, you'll see it's almost all Iran, the country that we still have a lot of issues with. Those are what are called Shia Muslims. So Sunni Muslims are a little more worldly. They're not as conservative. They're not as strict. They don't interpret the Quran like as strictly as the Shia. Okay, the Shia, which only make about up 10 to 13% of all Muslims today, they believe that the rightful person to have been the leader of the caliph should have been from Muhammad's family, and they believe that Ali, his 7-year-old cousin, should have been the person to be the next caliph. And so today Sunnis and Shiites don't really get along. If you go back to this map right here, if you look at the country of Iraq, which is right in the middle of that, just to the left of that major green blob, you'll see that Iraq has Sunni Muslims, Shia Muslims, and Kurds. Kurds are a different type of Muslim as well. And so that's one of the reasons why there's been so many problems there. Most Muslims in the United States are Sunni Muslims, more traditional. Okay. I had a good question. Someone just asked, Francesca, why do we still celebrate Christopher Columbus Day? Well, I didn't celebrate it at all. It was Monday. I totally forgot it even happened. I think that's because the world is in this disastrous place right now. But why do we still celebrate it? I think we're celebrating it a lot less than we used to. And also, as we're becoming more aware of what actually happened, it's becoming less and less. I mean, we used to get a day off school for that, Francesca, when I was in grade school. So it's a lot different. We're going to read an article on that when we get there, okay?
Where's Francesca?
Right there. All right. I got a visitor. Mr. Dickerson's here.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to, I'm going to end this. I'm going to have a couple of reminders for you guys. So I'm going to figure out how to do this because I need your help real quick, please.
What up, bro?
So I need to figure out how to show them my canvas.
I go to canvas and share the screen. That's Zoom, bro. What? Yeah, what?
All right. While you guys are still here,
Yes, click share.
where?
Go to share.
Where? Here?
How did you share your PowerPoint?
It says I'm sharing right now.
Click share.
It's sharing.
Click it. And then click it.
Oh,
It's not been 9 weeks, bro. Come on now. Oh,
okay.
yeah.
All right. So you guys, hey, a couple reminders here before you get out of here. We have a few minutes left in class. Go to modules. And yesterday, you guys just turned in your intro. I only had 45 intros turned in. If you want to get 90%, 18 out of 20 or 25 out of 27 points on it, turn it in. Okay. Also, then, if you didn't turn in, 50 people turned in their assignment from yesterday. That was called, that's on the under assignments, and it's 1014 Islam Web Quest. If you didn't turn that in, you can still turn that in. Okay, I haven't graded it yet. I haven't had time at 10. It's still 10 last night, and I have it again all day tomorrow. So, the last thing I want to remind you, I'm so out of sorts with this whole screen share deal. The last thing I want to remind you was your current events. So for period 1, Amaya, you're going to be presenting on Monday, okay? Make sure your stuff is to me by midnight on Sunday night, 11:59, okay? All right, David Brantley asked me what time is Panther Quest. Do you guys all want to know? Here, let me look it up real quick, all right? Get on the correct Google. Nathaniel Amos says 2. I think there it's in like waves though. Yeah, I think it starts around 2. And it's based off your last name according to Zariah. Mr. Vermillion. Yeah, I think it's I think they sent emails, so you guys can look that up. I can try and go send it out and remind here in a little bit. All right, you guys are free to leave. Have a great rest of your day. Get your work turned in, please, if you haven't yet. You guys will have a quiz tomorrow. Don't forget about that. Make sure you go back and look at these notes or you pay attention during class. All right, be good. See you guys.
Bye. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.